we've already got laws in place. What are these new laws going to do that the old laws don't?
That's a very good question, Mike. In all honesty, there's sufficient legislation to cover all these things, and I just don't know what they're trying to do. Is it just to show that they're doing something to make people feel better about these things? I really don't know. But what I think needs to be done is that police need to be very proactive and catching these culprits, hopefully before they've done harm to the shop owners, the shoppers themselves, the members of the public, and to ensure that they get the appropriate sentence in court. The last thing you want is for them to get caught and then there's nothing to show it, getting a slap on the wrist and the court say, well, you know, go off on the other way. There needs to be more stringent and more severe sentences to send a very strong signal. And hopefully that in itself will do what's required. More legislation, I think, just makes it more confusing for officers. They just need to get on with the job that they're supposed to do in the here and now.
Right. Well, because when I watch the various videos that you can now see on a daily basis of people going into shops with bags and literally just filling them and walking out of the shop, you know, they're not going to be stopped by some guy saying, you know, there's a law against that now. They're going to be arrested and you could face some time in jail. They're not going to care, are they?
Exactly. There's been sufficient laws, sufficient police powers to deal with this. So it means that it's more than just policing out. You can't arrest your way out of the problem. So it's a question of getting more support to those people vulnerable to this sort of crime. So if they're getting into drugs and alcohol, if they're getting into negative peer groups that might involve getting involved in these gangs, because a lot of these people who are involved in this large amount of shop theft, some of it is initiations into gangs. Right. Go and rob that store, you get points to be part of our gang or our negative peer group. So you need to get those diversion schemes away from getting sucked into the cycle of crime and violence. A lot of that is through exclusions. A lot of our young people involved in who've been excluded from school are into alternative provisions that end up that they're colleges for crime in a lot of ways because the young people are left to their own devices. So we have to keep these young people engaged if they're vulnerable to this sort of narrative, especially social media. That is a very big accelerant to exacerbating this type of crime and glorifying it. And that's the thing. There's too much on social media and the media glorifying this stuff. And as we really need to get the early intervention and prevention strategies so that people who are, you know, getting support don't get stuck into this type of lifestyle.
OK. Leroy, thanks very much indeed. Leroy Logan, the former Metropolitan Police officer, of course. Let's turn now to my panel for this evening. Editor of Spikes Online, Tom Slater, Telegraph journalist Madeline Grant and comedian Dave Chawner. Welcome to all of you. Thanks for joining us. I mean, we seem to be so far down the road of lawlessness now in certain areas of our society that I'm not sure that anything can stop. And when you hear Leroy Logan saying a lot of this stuff is now done as a kind of initiation, that makes a lot of sense to me because it does seem as though some of them are doing it almost for a dare. And
I think the big part of the problem is the fact that people feel that they can get away with this stuff because it's often the fact that if you talk about like shoplifting or people going and clearing out the shelves in the local supermarket, it's a small number of people hitting a lot of places. The problem is when it feels like it's going to be kind of accepted, the police aren't really going to show up, it's just something that gets claimed on insurance, if at all, then you're going to have those people just running riot. I don't think more laws is the answer to it. No. Enforce the law.
Well, like I say, they're hardly going to be stopped by somebody at the door saying, there's a law against this, you know. No. I say, you know, this is illegal.
That's what I don't understand. So there's not a law against shoplifting already?
Well, there is. That's the point. But this
so what's the point in this?
Well, it's a very good question. Maybe Madeline can answer it. I mean, the government continually intervene in these kind of situations now and say, don't worry, here's a new law. But everybody always then says, but there's already a law. It's already illegal.
I think their plan was to make assaulting a shop worker like a more serious crime than it would otherwise be. And I read recently, and I couldn't believe this, that basically unless you shoplift £200 worth of items, then you're not eligible for a prosecution.
Right.
So basically that massively incentivises people to just... Because if you're doing should we say, kind of slightly smaller scale things, but regularly, you're dodging prosecution every time, I would imagine.
Well, I would think so.
What kind of message is that sending?
And an awful lot of the shoplifting that you see, as I say, on social media tends to be people just going into a place with a bag and nobody's stopping them. They're not assaulting anybody. They're maybe being filmed, but nobody's trying to stop them because it's not worth trying to do because you don't know if you're going to get stabbed or attacked or whatever.
And frankly, it's a bit American, actually. It's that kind of US-style looting of just taking a big bag and like clearing a shelf completely.
Yeah.
It's astonishing that we let this happen.
I mean, we're looking at some of it now. And basically, there's nobody stopping these people because I've only ever seen a couple of instances where perhaps corner shops have taken a baseball bat to them, and that's about anything that's going to stop them. If they think they're going to get hurt, but if they think they're going to get arrested, they're not going to worry.
I've noticed more shops are now hiring their own private security to handle this because there is, as Tom said, you know, that feeling of lawlessness. But actually, there are rules that mean that I think private security guards can't request to look inside someone's bag, which also seems nonsense to me.
Right.
Only the police can do that. So it probably is still quite possible to evade capture, even if you have a private security guard there.
Right. I mean, I saw a very surprising thing in my local sort of shopping centre. There's a Tesco's there, and there was a guy being wrestled to the ground by two Tesco security guys because he clearly decided he was going to run off with a bag full of stuff. And
Was it WrestleMania?
It looks a bit like that.
Really?
People were sort of filming it because, you know, it's one of those things now. People, all they do is take out their cameras and film it. And they were giving this guy quite a good doing, actually. And he managed to get up and sort of run off, but they kept all the stuff back. But you don't see that very often.
No.
You don't see anybody being tackled, really. I mean, this facial recognition idea as well. I don't know what that's going to do. I mean, if you tell people that they might be recognised, they'll just wear a balaclava, won't they?
It just seems to be coming up with very complicated, probably bad solutions to quite simple problems, one of which is you've got the laws, you should enforce it. The other thing is, like you were saying, Madeline, about making it basically decriminalising kind of low-level theft. America shows us where that leads. You go to New York or San Francisco at the moment, you want to buy some toothpaste, they've got to get it out from some kind of screen behind a lock and key because they're worried about people coming in cleaning out the shelves because they know how much they can get away with stealing. So I think, again, people look for these, you know, whiz-bang ideas, new laws or whatever. Enforce the laws that are already there and get the security you need. Surely that's...
But is it too far gone for that? I mean, are there too many of these crimes being committed? Like, the police can't... I mean, certainly can't in Scotland because they're busy, you know, arresting people for hate crime or non-hate crime. But, you know, there literally aren't enough police, are there? Never will be.
Well, I mean, I think you can't say that no problem can be solved. You know, like it's hopeless.
Well, I can say that.
We're doomed.
I don't know if this one can.
That makes it seem like governments don't have the power to do something differently. They do. And if the public kind of checks out and thinks, basically retreats from like business life and civic life and says, well, no, there's no point, then, you know, you can't really... I don't think you should just, like, give up on...
No, I mean, I'm not giving up, but I'm asking the question. I mean, Leroy would say and would tell you that what he thinks we should do is dissuade the people from doing the shoplifting rather than arresting them and trying to put them in a prison where there isn't any space. And I think that's maybe where they have to start looking and stop these kids being, you know, recruited into gangs. But again, you know, that's a massive problem because they're all selling drugs and they're all making a lot of money.
There's also a bit of a bystander problem, I think, where, you know, something happens and people just pull out their phones. Now, I'm not expecting people kind of lay their lives on the line to protect Tesco's bottom line or whatever. But there was a kind of thing where if you saw something going wrong, particularly if it was a smaller business, you might trip that person up if they were running away.
Yeah, absolutely.
That sort of thing doesn't happen now either. Which
I got told off for doing that. There was a guy, Nixon Pantene Pro V, and he got on his bike.
Did he have nice hair?
He had really nice hair. And I was like, I thought it was a waste. To
Very
be honest.
important. You know.
And he went and got his bike, and then he came back in and got some more stuff, and I stood in the way to like try and stop him. And the security, I just thought it was a Sunday.
Not what I expect of you, Dave.
I've got nothing else on. You know what I mean? Like I thought this would be a laugh, and the security guard just stood there and watched it.
Right.
And I felt let down.
And so he just took more stuff, or did your intervention stop him?
Oh, it did nothing. I mean, like, I don't think I'm built to be a security guard. I think that's what it taught me.
Right.
But it is that bystander effect of, in that moment, I was like, what do I do? Like, because if I've got him, what's the next step?
Right.
Yeah,
like, I'm just holding on to a man who's got some Pantene Pro.
There used to be a time when you'd be sort of shamed into not stealing because you'd be frightened of what people would say.
Do you think shame is the answer?
It could be.
Yes.
Almost all circumstances.
Even thugs don't like to be shamed, I think. You know, maybe that is the answer.
And there is this weird way where it's kind of not as socially unacceptable as it used to be, which is
Yeah.
quite interesting.
Right.
You even get people kind of making excuses for it. It's the cost of living crisis. Of course they're going to clear out the shelves at local
And then we
Yeah.
get the wokists.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah, we've got to go, but we'll talk about this some more. But the wokists will say as well, of course, you know, it's the capitalists that are charging too much money for everything, so we should just steal from them.